Rotary friends, this is the first show that we are going to do in English. And for that, we have a very good friend, a very good Rotarian, very working Rotarian. He's Don Murphy. Don Murphy. He works in so many projects. Maybe some of you know him because he works in Mexico. He works in Europe. He works in the United States. He works everywhere. So he has been he works in the volunteer team for the Hope Heaven West. At home, he told me this. At home, I transport donated wheelchairs from donors to our warehouse. I repair and refurbish used chairs and assemble new chairs. I travel with teams and custom fit pediatric wheelchairs for mobility disabled children. Look.
Lots of stuff, huh?
Look, he's doing all of this. So I'm going to sum up all of this information, and he's going to tell us how is it that he works in all of these projects, and where does he get the time, and where does the passion for Rory comes. So we're going to start. My dear Don, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much, Don. Look, I was telling our friends, you send me a lot of information of different projects that you are working in Rotary. And when did you enter in Rotary?
I started in Rotary in the year 2000, actually on Cinco de Mayo, which we celebrate every year here in the U.S., even though you only celebrate it in Puebla. We take on all of Mexico on Cinco de Mayo. And my Rotary Club was chartered on May 5th in 2000. I joined then, and quite frankly, I had been traveling a lot before that and didn't have time for service clubs. I wouldn't have been a reliable member, because if I told you that I would show up for a project, then I would have a sudden change in my schedule and I'd be on an airplane to New York or Florida or someplace. But when I got off of the road and stopped traveling so much, I had seen my wife do service work and volunteer work in our community and nearby communities. And I thought I should be doing something like that too. And I saw a new Rotary Club was opening up in my community. And so I went and got involved with it. And quite frankly, all I was expecting was that they would have some projects and somebody would have a list with times on it and say, okay, Saturday morning, we need some people from 9 to 10 and from 10 to 11 and from 11 to 12. And I'd go in and sign up for a 2-hour block and do whatever they told me for 2 hours. And then I'd go home and pat myself on the back for being such a good guy that came out and did it. But that led me to get involved with a couple of friends who early on in my Rotary experience, these people were already in the path to becoming district governors, and they got me involved in their projects. I was the helper that did whatever they needed to get their projects going, and through that I got more and more involved in various parts of Rotary, and even before I traveled internationally, I was involved in international projects doing this, that, or the other thing from home that helped prepare or helped fundraise or something. And one of the things that happened was that I got involved with our multi-district president-elect training seminar. And I enjoyed that. And we rotated the chairmanship, the general chairmanship of that president-elect training seminar each year to a different district, and we just did a rotation in order. And I decided that I wanted to become the the general chairman of that event because it was a wonderful training event. It was fabulous. And I had attended it as a president-elect myself, but I went back and was on the staff. And in order to become the general chair, you had to have been the district governor a certain year before that. And so I had to go and put my name in to be district governor. And knowing that I was going down that path, I knew that I needed more international experience. I had community service, I had club service, I had youth service. I did a lot of stuff in a lot of different areas. And I retired early, so that's part of where I got the time to do all of this. But one of my friends was going on a wheelchair trip to, where did we go? To Guatemala. And so I went on a wheelchair trip with them, and I learned how to fit adults in wheelchairs. And then I went back later that same year and learned to fit adults. They were also doing children's fittings. I was a little bit afraid of that, but by the third time that I went out, I recognized that it was something that mechanically I could handle. All I had to learn how to do was it wasn't so much about the mechanics, it was learning to be clinical and focus on the job at hand instead of focusing on the children's pain and suffering. Children in wheelchairs are almost always disabled from birth. They're twisted up, they're uncomfortable, they're not used to being around other people. And it's fitting them in a wheelchair can be very stressful for them. And I had to learn how to do that and do the work and be with them without crying. You just want to, you feel bad and you want to cry for them. But I kept going back and learning how to do it and learning how to work with them. And I've done it now for 14 years. And I've fitted children throughout Mexico and Central America and South America, probably over 600 children that I have customized a wheelchair for, specifically to whatever their personal configuration was, their ailments, their position, and their abilities to control their motor activity. And that got me more involved in Rotary, and that connected me to more people around the world.
What about the dignity that they get with the wheelchair? There is the other day I was talking to a PDG, Omar Falcón,
who I know quite well, of course.
It's very nice guy. He was telling me about this bifid spine wheelchair.
Yeah, spina bifida, and they call it PCI. We call it cerebral palsy, or CP. Are two common things that we run into. Also scoliosis. And so we have a variety of wheelchairs from the affordable up to the very expensive. And we buy brand new ones that are affordable. We recycle and repair and reuse ones that are $10,000, $12,000. And those chairs can be customized to position the child in the chair, to support them. We're trying to position them to be seated at a 90-degree angle, but some of them can't control their head, and they'd be down like this all the time. And so in order to get their head back, we tilt them back. And we we have chairs in two sizes, but we can control the width of the chair. So if we have a 14-inch chair, we can narrow that down with pads on either side that can be brought in along their hips. And then we also have pads up along their trunk that we use to position them in the chair. And what we're trying to do is position them so that they are sitting straight in the chair and that their spine is straight, or as straight as we can accomplish, because they're still growing. They're still kids and they're growing and they're going to get bigger and they're going to get taller and they're going to, and we can either, we can't make them better, but we can avoid having them look worse. Hello, somebody's coming to visit us.
There's your friend.
My friend, there's
My
the
amic
kitty.
friend.
There's the kitty. And he, so we're not going to make these kids better, but we could put them in a standard folding chair and make them worse really fast. And that's the effort is do no harm. We want to optimize their future growth. We want to, we may be able to make some positive effect by the way that we position them in the chair. This is the chair that Omar was talking about. But whatever we do that's positive, it's going to be marginally positive. It's not going to make them well. But what we could do is we could make them a lot worse by doing a bad job. And so as we do this job, and again, I told you I've done over 600 children. I am not a seating professional. I am not an occupational therapist or a physical therapist or a medical doctor. I'm an accountant. I'm a retired accountant. I'm a good woodworker. I'm a good computer scientist. But I am not a therapist. And so when we travel, we have experienced volunteers like myself who are supervised by professionals. We have seating specialists who do this for a living who come with us. We have physical therapists who help people optimize their range of motion. We have occupational therapists who help people get ready to go back to work after an injury. These are people who are specifically qualified to do that job. And I've been doing it long enough that generally speaking, I say what I'm going to do and they go say, yeah, okay. But when I was first doing it, they'd say, well, what about this? Or what about that? And even after 14 years of doing it, after I've done whatever I think I'm going to do, before the child is wheeled out, it's reviewed by somebody with a greater level of experience to say, you missed this, or looks great, let's get this child on to his family. But back to the point that you made, that Omar brought up about dignity, part of what we're doing is bringing dignity to the individual, and we're also bringing dignity to the family. Many of these kids, we think about kids and putting them in wheelchairs and watching them self-propelled to move themselves away by moving the wheels. I probably haven't done a half a dozen kids in 14 years that could wheel themselves away. Most of them are too damaged. Many of them are brain damaged, as well as their limbs or their torso. And so we're trying to make it healthy for them and for their future growth. We're also trying to make it convenient for their families who love them to take good care of them and to make them feel more a part of the community where they live, so that they can reach out and participate instead of being left at home, being left in the back room, where they can take a position of contributing to their communities in many cases, um, instead of being somebody that you hide away and be embarrassed that you have this damaged child in your life.
Don, tell me one thing. How do you see the change in behavior of these kids when they start connecting with the world, with these chairs that allow them to be outside, to see the world? How do you see the behavior changes?
You know, honestly, I don't see a lot of the changes that I'm sure are occurring. Omar might be a better person to speak to that, because I'll go in for a week. I work 4 days fitting people. I'll fit 20 to 22, 23, 24 children over that 4 days. And then I get on an airplane and I come home. And so I don't, by day 2, the people that I saw on day 1 are all gone. They're home. They might be 2 hours away, or they might be 8 hours away. And I'm not able to observe their improvements or their behaviors. I have to rely on that I've done my best job on their behalf.
And so, can you evaluate? How can you evaluate the success of the different projects that you are involved?
Well, this particular project, we go back every couple of years to communities. I've made 5 trips to Oaxaca, Mexico. I've made 4 or 5 to various parts of Veracruz State. I've been in Guerrero. I've been in a whole variety of states where I'm there, and then 2 or 3 years pass and I'm back. So what I see is who comes back to have their chair readjusted, or who comes back for their chair to be repaired, or who comes back for a new chair because they've outgrown the old one. And all of that, I think, is pretty positive. But again, once we fit them in their chairs, sometimes they're not ready for a new chair, or don't need a new chair by the time we're back. So, and we do see people occasionally, and sometimes we don't recognize the child after a couple of years, but we recognize the chair and say, well, this is one of our chairs, and we recognize our work. But the thing is that we are focused on children, where there are a bunch of different groups that provide standard adult folding wheelchairs, but they're simply not appropriate for a child with a birth defect or a birth injury, because they don't provide adequate support, they don't provide adequate positioning, they don't have the ability to tilt back and bring the head online with the rest of the family. So what we're doing is unique, and I think what we see is the immediate gratitude from the families and from the kids themselves. We feel it's successful based on the number of times that we keep getting invited back to the same communities and supported by the same partners. And we keep expanding. So we are seeing new partners now too. We're growing. We used to do 400 or 500 chairs a year, and then we were up to doing 1,000 chairs a year. And now it looks like we're going to be doing more like 2,000 chairs a year, because the demand is there and the supply is not. We are the primary supplier of this kind of service. That type of wheelchair is not available for purchase in most of Latin America. And if it was, the families that we take care of couldn't afford them anyway. You know, they don't have enough annual income to feed themselves, let alone buy a wheelchair that costs, to them, it would be like buying a house.
One thing, let me ask you this. We are living in a more complicated world. It
Sure.
looks as if we are going backwards. The left is coming back with the vicious line that they have before, and people is receiving them with gratitude and with etc. So, which do you think is the level of work, the presence that Rotary must have in these times, with the war in Ukraine, with all of these things that are going bad in the world?
Yeah, it's tough out there right now. And remember when I said at the beginning of our conversation that when I joined Rotary, I thought I would sign up for 2 hours of work on Saturday morning and then pat myself on the back. I think that that's sufficient for a lot of Rotarians, and so we do a lot of things in Rotary that they're not bad things, they're good things, but they're as much a photo op to make us look good as they are really doing some substantial, sustainable good. I don't mean that as a criticism. It's better to do that than to do nothing. These are positive efforts, but they're not world changing. And what I believe we're doing with the pediatric wheelchairs, with the children's wheelchairs, I think that is world changing. I think that has an effect that's greater than all of the other projects that I'm involved in. I mentioned that I in my own community, I build little free libraries. They're little cabinets with an external roof and a couple of shelves, and we fill them full of books, and we put them on the front lawn of some neighbor's home. This is a good thing. It's a positive thing. It's helping promote literacy. It has nothing to measure up to what we do when we give a disabled child a wheelchair, particularly when they've never had one in their lives. The difference in the things that we can do are really significant. With the issues in Ukraine, where Rotary is doing a lot of stuff right now, and some of it is truly meaningful, and some of it is less so. You know, it's when we get food to Ukrainians, when we get shelter to them, when we get transportation for them out of harm's way, when we get them housing, when we assist them with going through whatever kind of legal ramifications that they have to step through in order to go from one country to another as a refugee. All of those things are really important. But some of the things, you know, whether we send them a box of socks or, you know, give every refugee off of the train a new pair of shoes, it's not a bad thing, but it's not world changing. And we have the horsepower as Rotary to focus ourselves on world changing activities and world changing events. And what I see of Rotary in the past 22 years that I've been a member is that we've been consistently moving in that direction of becoming more involved. Certainly Polio Plus was an early effort in that, but we've gotten more involved in clean water and sanitation and a whole raft of other things that are sustainable and meaningful and world-changing. And that's where I hope Rotary continues to go. And along the way, sure, let's get our picture taken. You know.
Another question. Although Rotary is maintaining the same membership in the world along the years, do you think that we are working better? Do you think we are getting better projects? Do you think we are confronting our time with the right weapons?
Boy, there's a question for me. I'll tell you, I think that when I came into Rotary, we had 1.2 million members. And as recently as last year, we were still calling it 1.2 million members. I've heard recently numbers like 1.3 or 1.4, which would be good. But in my own environment here back in the USA, we're actually shrinking. The allocation of districts to zones is based on that we've got 17 directors, and all of the zones are supposed to be roughly equal populations. And our population shrank so much that we had to take a whole bunch of additional districts into the West in order to get our total count equal to that of other parts of the world. So I'm not sure that we're doing everything right, certainly where I live. The other thing that's certainly true is that when I came into Rotary, we had, I forget whether it was 32 or 33,000 members in that 1.2 million clubs, excuse me, 33,000 clubs with 1.2 million members. And now then we get up to where we've got 35,000 clubs, but still only have 1.2 million members. So what you can see there is that the size of the average club is shrinking. We used to feel like a club with 25 was a small club, and that a club with 200 was pretty substantial. And now we're saying, seeing clubs with 15 and 16 that are the average, more averagey size for a small club. And they're holding together and they're doing good work. It's not clear to me what the right proportion should be. We want every member to be active and involved, but quite frankly, some of our members come for lunch or breakfast and to see their friends, and they're really not deeply involved in service or changing the world. They want to meet business associates and potential clients and things like that.
What do you think is triggering the passion for Rotary these days in the new associates, the people that wants to come in to Rotary, and because they are seeing the vaccination, because they are seeing the help with wheelchairs, because they are seeing all of the work that Rotary is doing, and it's changing the world of these people that are receiving these gifts of generosity. What do you think is the trigger that can not only maintain but expand our horizons in growing in generosity? What do you think is that weapon?
Yeah, and I think that the answer isn't necessarily to grow numbers. If my club expanded from 25 members up to 50 members, I don't know that we'd be any stronger club. I think that we have to do a better job of selecting who we recruit. And we have to do, we've always done, I think Rotary has done better than average in comparison to other organizations, service organizations, and other types of organizations, done a better job of training. But we have to do more. There's a lot of people whose depth of knowledge of Rotary is pretty shallow, and yet they've been members for 20, 25, 30 years. They never got the spark to get involved past their own club. I think that's one of the things that changes you too, is getting involved past your own club. It certainly affected me. I had friends all over the Central Valley of California, and then suddenly I had friends all over California, and then suddenly I had friends all over the US and all over the world. My life is very different than it was 22 years ago when I joined Rotary, and it is largely due to the level of involvement and the level of training and the number of people who came to me and said, can you help on this? We have to keep encouraging people and training people and talking to people, and getting them involved. And at the same time, I have some sympathy for the folks who just come and have lunch. I've belonged to the American Legion for 35 years or more, and I haven't been to my post in 35 years, but I pay my dues every year. And I feel like that's helping to support them. So I recognize that the people who are in Rotary and they pay their dues and they come and have lunch, that somehow they're contributing, even if they're not doing service projects. I also have kind of an attitude about service versus fundraising. I know that as a district governor, I went from club to club and I asked them about their favorite project, but I said, I don't want to hear about your fundraisers. I know you love your fundraisers. You all get out and work on them together, but that's something that you're doing for yourself. What I want to hear about is what you're doing for other people. And I also don't want to hear about the checks that you write to other organizations that do good. And those are good things that you do, but that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in when you put your hands on and do the projects personally yourselves, make your own effort part of the thing. And I think that's what's going to move Rotary forward, is that kind of action with people who are personally, physically involved. But again, I don't feel bad about those who contribute by helping pay the dues and helping raise the funds. Those are good things. They're not bad things. They're not what's going to move the needle on our contribution to the future of the world.
This is my last question,
Okay.
Don. How do you see the world without Rotary?
Well, it bobbles through quite well, in spite of itself. The world is a difficult, challenging place out there, and if we were to go away, the key actors, the people who are making the bulk of the difference on behalf of Rotary, wouldn't go away. They might lose their affiliation and become affiliated with some other group that did clean water and sanitation, or that did wheelchairs, or that did community enhancements. I think the people would still be there. I think that we might not contribute as much if we were disaggregated like that. But then again, we might, because we might become more specialized and more knowledgeable in a series of individual fields. One of the things that happened when we went to what they called, the future concept of grants, and how grants changed a few years back, was it was clear that Rotary was trying to steer us down a pathway of being more effective with the foundation's money. And that has changed Rotary already, because we used to do everybody's everything. If somebody wrote up a grant, we gave them money and they went and did it. And sometimes those things weren't sensible. I had a project that somebody in my club wanted to do. It was a water project in Africa, and it was a pump, and it was not an electric pump. It was a merry-go-round. And the idea was that the children of the community would come out and they'd play on the merry-go-round, and that would run the pump and that would run the water. What they didn't understand was, first of all, the kids are going to get tired and go home, and then there's no more water. The other thing they didn't understand was that the merry-go-round was actually harder to move when you attached a pump to it than if you just had a merry-go-round. So the kids were off of it even faster. It was a project that was not well thought through on an engineering basis, but it sounded great. And a lot of people were ready to put money into that. And you could do that under the old matching grants program, but under the new global grants program, that'd never fly, because you had to prove sustainability. You had to have a better project, and you got more questions, and there were more things that you simply couldn't get funding for anymore. So
it has been very educative and very inspiring talking to you, Don. I wish many more people like you were around talking to us about the experiences and the changes and the work that we are doing to change lives in so many levels, in so many countries. So we are going to keep talking to you if you allow us. And
I'm here. I'm here.
Well, my friends, this was a very interesting show this time, and I hope we can do it again with our friend Don Murphy. And well, this is it. I hope you have how can I tell you, a passion for Rotary with these shows. Don, it has been a pleasure. Have a nice life. Have a nice time. Have a nice weekend, and enjoy life.
And we'll see you back in Mexico this summer.
I hope.
Okay.
Bye-bye, my friends.
Thank you.